Penguin Random House Audio presents The Music of Bees by Eileen Garvin. Read for you by Thérèse Plummer. For all the wild creatures and everyone who loves them. 1. Orientation Flight. Those who suppose that the new colony consists wholly of young bees, forced to emigrate by the older ones, if they closely examine a new swarm, will find that while some have the ragged wings of age, others are so young as to be barely able to fly. A Practical Treatise on the Hive and Honeybee, L. L. Langstroth, 1878. Jacob Stevenson had the tallest mohawk in the history of Hood River Valley High School. Even before it was listed as an official yearbook record, he was pretty sure about it. In his senior photo, it was a blue-black masterpiece that flared up to a height of 16.5 inches. Well, almost. It was more like 16 3/8, but close enough to silence any quibblers. Jacob had put 6 months into growing the spiky mass, which he sculpted into 4 sections, and it had reached its optimal height right before spring finals last year. On this morning, he surveyed the masterpiece of his hair in the mirror and felt no little satisfaction that he'd managed to maintain it for more than a year now, despite unforeseen challenges. The undeniable truth of a mohawk was that you were always fighting gravity, and at a certain point, you lost. You had to be realistic. The idea was to aim for maximum volume that would hold over an entire day. A fallen mohawk would be a terrible embarrassment, especially for a boy of 18. Jacob had experimented with various products to maintain the loft. He'd tried egg whites, mustache wax, hairspray, and even some adhesive from woodshop. An unfortunate episode. All that experimenting revealed that a mixture of extra-firm sculpting wax and professional-grade hairspray was the best choice to sustain that 16 and nearly 1/2 inch height of achievement. Noah Katz had taken the official measurement the night of the spring jazz band concert. Both of them had been dressed in the traditional black tuxedos that members of the Hood River Valley High School Jazz Band had been wearing for the past 20 years. Jacob thought then that his hair contrasted nicely with the powder blue cummerbund and bow tie. He posed with his trumpet as Noah snapped a photo, cackling, the phone dwarfed in his big paw. His cheeks shook as he laughed. "Sick, Stevenson." Katz was a good-natured lumberjack of a guy. The two had become friends at May Street Elementary in 5th grade band, Jacob on trumpet and Noah on trombone. Noah did not have a mohawk. Noah's hair was crazy curly, and he referred to it as the situation. Unlike Jacob, he did not need any product to make his hair resist gravity. He grew his curls up and out, chiefly to irritate his mother. "Look out, ladies," he crowed, tugging on his curls with one hand so that he resembled a human dandelion in fluff stage. He snapped a selfie. Then they hustled into Noah's truck and sped across town to the high school. They had been late, as usual, and Mr. Schaefer was mad, but their band teacher seemed always to be looking for a reason to yell at the two boys, so it was no big deal. Remembering that night made Jacob smile. He turned his head from right to left. On either side of the mast of hair, he could see bits of stubble on his otherwise cleanly shaven skull. He turned on the faucet and dampened a washcloth under the tepid stream to wet his head. He squirted a soft puff of shaving cream into his hand and patted it on the stubble. The lemony white foam smelled institutional, like the hospital, and made him feel slightly nauseated. He breathed through his mouth and picked up his razor. A mohawk took discipline. He had to wash, or at least wet, his hair, then comb it out, apply wax to the wet mop, part it into sections, and dry it with a high-power blow-dryer before spraying it into place and then shaving the stubble. The process made him sweat on warm days like this one. It was a big investment of time, really. But that was cool. These days, He had nothing but time. 2 hours to do his hair was no problem at all. The reality of that hit him like a punch in the throat, as it often did when he sat in front of the bathroom mirror in the morning. The dark little hairs on his scalp poked through the white lather, standing up unwaveringly while Jacob Stevenson, or Jake, as everyone but his parents called him, could not. Jake swallowed hard. It seemed so stupid. The mohawk itself and the mohawk record, considering that in addition to having the tallest mohawk in the history of Hood River Valley High School, he was probably also the only kid there who'd ever had one in this farm town, which was short on punk and big on rodeo. It was also stupid because he no longer went to school there, having sort of graduated last spring. But mostly it seemed stupid because it was pretty much all he had to do on a given day. Fix his fucking hair. Now that the doctor's appointments had tapered off and his physical therapy was down to once a month and he had all the time in the world to face the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Jake pushed back from the mirror and looked at his body. Lean and muscled in his torso and arms. His legs didn't look terribly different than they had before, but sometimes he almost felt like they belonged to someone else. The wheelchair was why he had sort of graduated. The school administration had mailed his diploma to his parents' house while Jake lay in the hospital 60 miles away in Portland. His teachers had all passed him, even though that was a stretch for a couple of classes, like PE, since he was in the habit of skipping to go to Noah's house after second period to get high before lunch. He hadn't darkened the gym door since before Christmas break. But even Mr. McKenna wasn't enough of a dick to fail a PE student who was going to spend the rest of his life as a paraplegic. Irony, yo. Jake's mother had told him he'd be graduating when he was still doped up during those first days at the hospital. She sat next to his bed, her eyes puffy behind her pink-framed glasses. She tried not to cry in front of him, though she barely left the chair next to his bed. She sat for hours, holding his hand and murmuring that God was watching over him. She'd run through the list of people who had called and emailed to send their thoughts and prayers. His teachers, the neighbors, the mailman, people from church. People he'd never heard of. But he didn't say that because it would have hurt her feelings. She brightened when she got to the part about the graduation ceremony, which, at that point, was still weeks away. "We're so proud of you, honey," she said. "Your name will be in the program. They asked Noah to receive the diploma on your behalf since you won't be able to—" Her voice faltered, and she stopped. Jake winced, his smile a grimace. "Since I won't be able to walk, you mean?" His laughter came out in short barks, and then he couldn't stop. He blamed the drugs, but there was more to it. He laughed and laughed at the word walk, which had taken on such a different meaning now that he had lost the use of his legs. His young, strong boy legs. Legs that had skateboarded and run and climbed. Legs he had completely taken for granted every single day of his stupid life until the day he couldn't use them anymore. He couldn't stop laughing, even when his mom put her face into her hands and wept. He was such an asshole, he thought now, sitting in front of the mirror. He rolled forward and peered at himself, noticing how much thinner he was than he had been last spring. He had laughed because the word walk had made him think of his father, Ed Stevenson, and his fleshy, angry face. "The least goddamn thing you can do is walk your lazy ass down the aisle at graduation," Ed had said. "You turn 18, we're gonna give you a knife and fork and send you on your goddamn merry way." That had been winter break of his senior year, when Jake realized his grades didn't matter, now that he'd lost his music school scholarship, and it seemed like he might actually flunk out. "Don't worry about me, Ed," Jake replied. He'd begun calling his father by his first name when he started high school, knowing it bugged him. "I'll be out of here so fast you won't even see me go." Jake had decided to move to Portland after the dream of music school faded to impossibility last year. He figured he'd work in a music store.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?